Hello, I'm Dr. Brian Fraser, and in this video I'll be showing you how to use the Google Maps for Android. Some of this has changed in 2018, so this video should cover some of those new changes. This video is being recorded in June of 2018. So the first thing you're going to need is to access any of the Google APIs, such as the Google Maps, you're going to need an API key. This uniquely identifies your application to Google, and they can then bill you if you are hitting that much traffic, or just kind of control access to things. If there's an app that's misbehaving, they want control. So the first thing we need to do is get an API key. So we can go to developers.google.com/maps/documentation/android/start, which I think will then redirect me to somewhere else. Pretty close. Okay, so this is a good place to start. It's going to, it's a guide here if you wanted to walk through all this details and some information about changes in policies and pricing. But anyway, I'm going to click Get Started. They've simplified a lot of this now. I can basically pick one of three things. Do I want maps, which is going to include maps for the web and apps and Android and iOS? Do I want to enable routes, which is sort of drawing routes on the maps? And do I want to do places, so reverse lookup and geolocation and so forth? For this, I'm just going to cover maps. So I'm going to put check marks here. You may want to put a check mark in routes if you also want to do sort of the directions and distances and so forth. So maps is good enough for me. I now need to sign in, so this will slowly slide off screen, and I will then type in my super secret ID. This is a test account, so no worries on that. Okay, so I'm now signed in. I could go through and scroll through this and figure out all their lovely marketing, but anyway, get started. Maps. Continue. I'm going to create a new project here. And so my project name, let's give this Maps API video. You, of course, will need to name it something interesting for your own use. So as it's doing this, it's now on Google servers, creating the appropriate sort of projects and so forth to manage. You can set the accounts you want. I'll click on this. I think I've already got one here. It should have it for me. Yep. There we go. You have to create an account. If you don't yet have a billing account, you have to create one. They need credit card information and so forth. They say that they won't automatically rebill you, and you get a lot of free kind of initial access. So I don't believe I'll be charged, but buyer beware on that one, I guess. Anyway, so click OK. I've now got my account. We can see here I'm on the trial. I'm not going to bother clicking this upgrade button. I don't want to be paying for this. And right now it's going to be generating the API key for me for this. And so here's my API key. Don't bother trying to copy mine down. I'm going to disable it immediately after this video. So anyway, you'll get your own API key, and you wanted to work with that. Copy that for the moment, because we're going to need it after we get Android Studio set up and running. So let's go do that now. Now that we've got the API key, we can go about using it. So I've gone and I've created a project. I've named it Maps Demo, and it's just Hello World, the standard Hello World demo app. It's going to run. I will now put this up on my emulator, and we should see Hello World pop up. You can create your own project if you wanted to, going through one of the wizards and so forth to say that I want a maps project. Often I'll want to add maps to an existing project, so that's what I'm doing here. We're going to start with a Hello World and then go from there. Okay, so let's, into this project, figure out how we're going to add more. I'm going to go here into my app, and under Java, here's the package that I'm working inside of. There's my main activity. I'm going to right click on this, and then I say New, and all the way down here under Google, I want a Google Maps activity. So this will give me a new activity. Maps activity sounds good. Maps, everything else looks fine. I'll click OK. Now this note here at the top is saying, go get yourself an API key. We've just done that. So all of this to do before you run your application, it's gone through and generated some fingerprints in this for my own app. I'm not going to care about that at the moment. Okay, so the big thing here is it says there's this place to put in your API key. I'm not actually going to put my API key in for the moment. I'm going to show you what it looks like when things go wrong, because you will have it go wrong for you. Basically, I've got here my maps activity now that Google has auto-generated for me, and it's going to put up a map. And then when it loads, when the map is ready, it's going to drop a pin on Sydney's latitude, -34 by 151. So if I just ran the program now, I'm not yet switching to that, so I'm going to switch to that. I'm going to say Start, Activity, New, Intent, this, and I want to run Maps Activity .class. Of course, this would not be a great way to do it. I'm just having my main activity auto-forward me to my Maps activity. You might want to have a button that takes you there. You might want to make the Maps activity your launch activity. At any rate, this is good enough for me. So we're going to launch, and the first activity may pop up and then immediately switch over to my other one. I'm not expecting this to work though, because I've not yet put in my API key. So here we are, loading up, switching over, and this is all I'm going to get. I don't see any map here. What I do see is in the very bottom left here, the Google kind of mark, and that's all I'm getting. I wish there was a bit more information here. Let's see if there's anything in the log cat. I think there is in my log cat. Let's see if we got anything. Here we go, authorization failed. So there's something nice. Google API authorization failure. Please go to such and such for how to correctly set up the map, and so on. So that's the indication we'd get inside of logcat for a failure. And it tells me here, ensure that your is enabled, ensure that the key exists. My API key currently is your cert. So that's it. We got to change it. So let's go back in here. The API key is being stored in this file under my res, values, and then Google Maps API.xml. Now interestingly, there's actually two versions of this file. There's a debug version and a release version. I believe you can right click on it and get to the release version. I can't remember how to do that, but anyway, the debug version is just fine for now. So to the debug version, I'm going to paste in my API key. If I wanted to, I think I can upgrade the formatting on this. So there's my API key. Yours will look something similar. I believe they all start with AIZA, I think. That's what they were saying. Okay, so let me save that. I'm going to go back to my main activity, rerun my app. With any luck, we'll see now a map with filled in details. There we go. Okay, so it's using my API key and correctly reading it. Okay, so that concludes what I'm going to cover. There's a bit of troubleshooting though that I'm going to walk through now. If it's working for you, you can go ahead and stop the video. If you got one of those blank screens, what else can you do? So let's imagine that you're stuck with that blank screen. It says Google at the bottom, but nothing up here. A couple things to check on. First, go back and double check your API key. Make sure you put it in here. Make sure you copy and pasted it correctly. Re-copy and paste it from the web would be my first step. The next thing to do would be to go back to your online portal here with Google, and I think I can see in here, yep, my APIs, and it'll show me the different APIs that I've got enabled. And how do I want to do that? Gotta switch to Maps API video. And just make sure that you've got the right things enabled. and it may tell you kind of what you have and haven't enabled. So here I have not yet enabled unused APIs, the directions, geolocate, and so forth. So make sure that your Maps is in here. Particularly Maps SDK for Android is what we're using now. A few other things to check out if you're still having problems. You want to check that you make sure you're updated. So go to Tools and then SDK Manager. And under here, make sure that you've installed at least one of the latest ones. I'm currently got APIs 26 through 28 installed. The latest and greatest is perhaps maybe not the best. Going with the latest named one is not a bad idea. A trick here is if you click on the Show Package Details in the bottom corner, it may give you some other insights as to what's being installed. One big thing is to make sure you're running your emulator on the Play with Play support. So if we look at my emulator for 26, which is what I was running this in, we can see down here that I've got this Google Play Intel Atom system image. It's the word Play that's important. You'll note the one above it is just Google API. The APIs are not what we want. We want the one with Play support because we needed the Play services in order to access the map. So make sure you've installed the right system image here. Some of the newer ones up here, we can see it's got 64-bit one, it's got the Atom Play, and the API ones here. So make sure you get the right one. And if they've got a line through them, make sure you go ahead and update them, get them to the latest support. So carrying on with that, we want to then go to Tools and then Android Virtual Devices. Here we can see that I've got a number of different Android virtual devices installed. I was running it on this one. A couple things to note. Under this Play Store, it's got the logo. That indicates that it does have Play capabilities. Likewise over here under the target it says Google Play. If you install a different system, a different version, it might not work. Also, if you install a different, even different resolution, so let me just pick a different one here. I'm going to go down to just a generic phone. And I'll say that I want, I don't here have the options to get the Google Play images. These are all just Google API. I'll go back, and I'll go back to the Nexus one. Here it says Play Store. And so it only supports the Play Store on a few of these. And in fact, I think it's only the Nexus 5, the Nexus 5X, that you can actually do this on. So make sure you've selected the right one of those. Okay, so once you've got all that through, the next thing I would suggest is I have had problems in the past with different versions of the API. For a while, API 27 wasn't working, so make sure you upgrade to the latest if you are trying API 27. If you're hitting a problem with something, go back and try 26 or 27 or even 28 now. Those I've just tested today, and they work fine for me. Okay, and the last thing is if you're trying to do API, let me just go back and launch this now. I'm going to switch to a new emulator. I'm going to run my 28. It turns out there's one extra thing you need to do for 28. So if you're running in Android 20 API 28, I've launched it. If I try to just launch my application here, I believe it's going to fail. And it was failing. It was going to give me an error of class def not a found error. See, it closes. I go back over here, select the right emulator. And nothing came up. Let's try that again. Anyway, I'm not sure why nothing's coming up in here. Maybe it's a different version. Disconnect the emulator. Anyway, the error I was getting, I'll copy and paste it in here. I was seeing the error that looked like this. It threw an exception. I got that exception. To deal with, it was unable to launch, find the Apache due to a protocol version. So the fix is to put something in the manifest. So as per Stack Overflow's magnificent advice, if we go to the manifest, under the applications section here, I'm going to go right inside it, and I'm going to copy and paste this in. This use libraries, Android name, Apache, org.apache.http legacy, and required false, Android required false. Now when I try and rerun it, with any luck, it'll continue working. And we're back up. One final thing is, if you are running it in the emulator and you get a message to deal with OpenGL ES, basically Android Maps or Google Maps requires OpenGL ES2 and above, you can check the version in your emulator based on what it's actually sort of faking or think it's supporting. You can download some sort of hardware info apps and look for the OpenGL version. If it only says 1.0, then you probably have an issue with your emulator, in which case you might want to roll back from the latest and greatest. If you're on the bleeding edge, go back to something safe, like maybe Android API 26, which has reasonably good support for different video cards and so forth. Okay, so thank you very much for this video.